What do research and other experts tell us about board effectiveness? 51 years ago, Dr. Peter Drucker, often considered to be the father of modern management, said this in his 1974 book, Management. He said, "The one thing all boards have in common is they do not function." He actually said that. And he actually italicized that sentence, "they do not function." He put it in italics. It's if he was saying, yeah, I said it, and yeah, I meant it. What he was saying was that in general, boards don't function like they should, meaning they're not effective at governance. Now, if we needed any proof of this, in the charter school world where I specialize, we have research that tells us in the past 20 years or so, hundreds, if not thousands, depending on how you count closures, of charter schools have tanked. Whether through revocation, non-renewal, or simple insolvency, they're no longer in operation. Now, follow my logic on this. If the board is at the top of the org chart, as it is in a charter school, if we want fewer closures and less fraud, by the way, we need to do a better job of teaching boards how to govern effectively. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The title of my talk is Advice That We Give to Boards That Is Almost Helpful. It's almost helpful. Over the years, I've heard these 5 things. In fact, I've heard these even before I entered the consulting space. Number 1, you've probably heard them too. Number 1, the board should avoid micromanaging. How many of you have heard somebody say that? The board should avoid micromanaging. It's almost helpful advice. Number 2, the board should stay in its own lane. Yeah, they should, but where are the lane lines? Number three, the board should focus on the big picture and leave daily operations to management. Okay, that's almost helpful. Number 4, the board's role is to adopt policy. We're gonna kick the tires on that one real good in just a minute. And then number 5, my personal favorite, the board should ask questions. All right, so these are the 5 things that we say to boards that are almost helpful. Let's see if we can kick the tires on them and figure out why these pieces of advice really aren't as helpful as they need to be, starting with the board should avoid micromanaging. There are 2 problems with this piece of advice. The first is kind of obvious, and the second is a bit more subtle. The obvious advice is, what's the objective definition of micromanaging, right? I used to live in California, and people gave me good advice. They said, don't drive too slow on the freeways. And if you've driven in California, right, you know this, you can be doing the speed limit in the slow lane, and people will still zip by you, they honk, they tailgate, and flip you off. I guess they're on their way to the beach so they can, chill out, dude. What's micromanaging? Who knows? By the way, if the CHP pulls you over, if you're ever out there and you're driving, and you just say, I'm moving with the flow of the traffic, doesn't work, tried it. That's not going to get you out a ticket. Proving that subjective interpretation is really defined by the person with more authority in whatever situation it has to be. But the other problem with micromanaging advice, the board should avoid micromanaging, is that actually the board shouldn't manage at all, and micromanaging is merely a degree of management. World-renowned, the late Dr. John Carver said in his seminal work, Boards That Make a Difference, he said the board's role isn't to co-manage the school, the board's role is to govern the school. And that difference can be rolled up into a single sentence, and that sentence is this. The role of the board is to provide oversight of management, not to be a participant in management. It's as simple as that. So number 1, let's stop telling boards they should avoid micromanaging. Let's start telling them, stop co-managing and govern. That's the advice that we need to be giving. All right, the board should stay in its lane. Sounds good. Here's the problem with that advice. Where are the lane lines? I noticed this when I got in the consulting space. Everybody was saying stay in the lane lines, but nobody was defining where the lane lines are at. So now, if you're a self-employed consultant like me, when somebody should be explaining something and they aren't, there's a name for that. We call that a business opportunity. So I started developing, researching and developing, and eventually I kind of figured out that there were 5 key differences, which I've written about in different publications, and obviously in a short talk like this, don't have time to unpack. But I mentioned that the distinctions do exist because what we need to do, we need to stop telling boards to stay in their lanes, and we need to start teaching them where the lane lines are, and then our advice should be periodically evaluate yourselves to see how well you are staying in your lane lines. Advice number 3, the board should focus on the big picture and leave daily operations to management. Now, I get the intent behind this advice. I understand what they're trying to say. Big picture is sort of shorthand for strategic plan and campus expansion and enrollment growth and charter renewal. I get the idea behind this, but this piece of advice has 2 problems with it. The first is, what is big picture? It's like the word micromanage. Who knows? There's no objective definition. I'll prove this to you right now. For years, probably 6, 7 years now, I have been very happy with my big picture 46-inch flat screen TV. Love it. Until I was in Sam's Club the other day, and you walk right in the door, and they were selling 86-inch, these are bigger than me, 86-inch flat screen TVs. Now I'm depressed because I don't own a big picture TV anymore. Big picture is completely subjective. I'll give you an example of this in the charter school world. So years ago, I had this client, and I'm sitting in a board meeting, and somebody just departed the agenda. It wasn't on the agenda. Some board member just out of the blue raised a question about whether the breading on the chicken fingers served by the school cafeteria was whole wheat or white flour. For real, in a board meeting, with me sitting there. This led to a spontaneous debate that went on for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm sitting there thinking, why are they talking about this? A week or 2 earlier, they had gotten their charter renewed for 3 years when they could have gotten a 10-year renewal. And on the heels of that, they want to talk about the chicken finger breading in the cafeteria. Obviously, the board and I had a different perspective on what constitutes big. There's another problem with this big picture advice, though, too, and this is a bit more subtle, but if you think about this, charter schools get sued, they get investigated, all that kind of thing. Nobody that I'm aware of ever got sued for something that went wrong with their big picture, right? Nobody gets investigated because your strategic plan was not strategic enough or whatever. But schools get into trouble all the time because something went wrong, sometimes very wrong, in daily operations. The things that we tell boards, essentially, don't worry about it. An example of this is your financial policies and procedures or your financial controls. You can't get any more daily operations than your financial policies, and yet by telling boards, stay out of daily operations, we're essentially implying they shouldn't even ask questions about that, and so they don't. And then you have fraud in charter schools. And by the way, when the IG shows, the Inspector General's office or the FBI shows up to investigate, the boards do get real interested in the daily operations of that at that point. I personally maintain, though, that that a deposition is like the least desirable board development opportunity that we can pursue. Just my own sort of thinking on the thing. What should we be telling boards? We should stop saying focus on the big picture and leave daily operations to management. What we should be telling boards is this: focus on 2 things. How well the school is producing the outcomes it was chartered to produce, and how well is it operating within all the required parameters. And certainly, sound financial controls is a required parameter, at least if the board cares about not being a sitting duck for somebody that wants to defraud the school. So we need to stop saying that. And then I think I hate this one the most. The board's role is to adopt policies. There are so many things wrong with that statement, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you're equating a granular piece of something the board might do, and it's even questionable whether that is actually a board responsibility, but you're equating one strand of something that the board might do, and you're saying that's your role? Like, that's your whole role? We're going to sum it up in that? I mean, why not say the board's role is to follow Robert's Rules of Order? Why not say the board's role is to have a standard order of business for its regular meeting agendas? Those are great best practices. We don't say, well, that's the board's role to do that. I don't know what our obsession with policies is. By the way, if you read very much literature at all on risk management, as I do, it's practically unanimous in saying that adopting policies is actually a management function, which makes sense because it assumes that management has the subject matter expertise for that organization to know what the policy should be. We also, the other problem with this too, and we all, if we've dealt with boards, you know this is what happens. They adopt sometimes entire handbooks and policy manuals without even reading them. It's as if they don't understand that their fiduciary duty includes this component that's called duty of obedience, meaning that when they vote to approve that policy manual, they have now legally bound the organization to follow it. And so when the lawsuit comes out and they're trying to determine whether the school was following its policies or not, again, the board gets real interested in it, as they should be. My advice is, let's not wait till the lawsuit. Actually take a look at those policies if you feel like you need to adopt them. The advice that I give to boards is not so much you need to adopt policies, but you need to make sure as a board, make some reasonable effort that the organization's policies, no matter who adopted them, are actually being followed. Because if you get sued, that's going to be the question. Did you follow the policy? And then lastly, number 5, the one that I said that was my favorite, the board should ask questions. So we tell boards this, and boy, do they ask the questions. The chicken finger breading questions. In charter schools, student sock colors, uniform fabrics, fundraising, the latest gizmo we're selling, fundraising progress, pretty much every jot and tittle that you can think of, except for the questions that we want them to be asking. Now, we could change this piece of advice by just inserting one word. Watch this bit of alchemy right here, verbal alchemy. The board should ask informed questions. You said, Brian, can you give us some examples? Absolutely. How about this? How well are we following our financial policies and procedures? By the way, when you ask that as a board, make sure the answer gets documented in the minutes. How about this question? Is everybody in our organization who has access to significant amounts of our money passed a criminal background check? Sometimes the answer is no, and then people are surprised that they got a board member on there who has a financial crimes conviction. And they always, by the way, they always say to the newspaper, we're so shocked. We trusted him. Don't say that. Be original if that happens. We know you trusted him. He wouldn't have been able to steal the money if you hadn't trusted him. Trust is a condition for fraud. How well are our students accomplishing the outcomes we were chartered to produce? Those would be great how well questions. So I'm going to leave you with an informed how well question. For those of you who raised your hand, you serve on a board or you report to a board, I'm going to give you a how well question, or an informed question that I urge you to take back to your board at the next meeting. You say, well, Brian, there's not time to get it on the agenda. That's okay. Pretty much everybody follows the same thing in parliamentary procedure. At the end of the agenda, there's a thing that is properly called good of the order. We don't call it that in practice. The board chair just says, does anybody have anything else? That's the intellectual equivalent, by the way, of saying we're now about to depart the agenda and make this a free-for-all. Who would like to go first? Seize that opportunity and say, yes, I have a question. When was the last time as a board that we participated in board development so we could become more effective at governance? If you get the deer in the headlights look, the next thing I want you to say is, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I'd like to play a TEDx video for you that I saw. Any objections? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.